Think about the digital footprint you leave behind every single day. Every text you send, every video you stream, every payment you tap on your phone, and every route you trace on a map. Now multiply that by 1.5 billion people. That is India. It generates close to 20% of the world's data. And yet India still does not have a frontier artificial intelligence model of its own. It relies on models built by companies like OpenAI, Google, and Anthropic. India is facing an artificial intelligence trilemma. It needs to build an independent or sovereign AI ecosystem at catch-up speed and with a fraction of the resources that the US and China have. My guests today believe it's possible.
Sovereignty is not self-sufficiency. Sovereignty means a smart way of interdependence with clearly identified things that I must own.
Srikanth Velamakanni is co-founder of enterprise AI firm Fractal Analytics, the country's first publicly listed pure-play AI company. He is also the chairperson of NASSCOM, the body that represents India's $300 billion IT industry.
I don't think you need to fit a square peg in a round hole. You need all kinds of models. You need the frontier capability models as well as very focused models.
Ganesh Ramakrishnan is professor of AI, machine learning and natural language processing at the Indian Institute of Technology-Bombay. He is also a member of BharatGen, a government-backed sovereign AI initiative that's leveraging local data sets to build models in multiple Indian languages. So the question is simple but urgent. Can the world's most populous country close this artificial intelligence gap? Or is it at risk of ceding control over its own digital future? Hi, I'm Menaka Doshi. Welcome to Emerging, where we dive deep into how the world's most exciting rising economies are shaping the global future. Srikanth, let's first start with understanding AI sovereignty. How would you define it?
In a very simple way, AI sovereignty should mean that AI cannot be used as a weapon and shut you off. Right? If you are, for example, you have built AI workflows into your decision making, can somebody turn it off at a moment's notice or can use it to go against you, right? So we want, ideally, any country should have the guarantee that its systems will run without it being forced by any other country. That will be sovereignty at the very basic definition of that. Now, one way to think about that is to think of the Jensen 5-layer cake of the AI infrastructure. I'm sure many of the people are familiar with that. It starts with basically the energy layer. At the root of all of this is access to electricity, access to energy in such a way that it can power all the AI in the world. AI can be used for various purposes, but it needs energy to work. Now that's the first layer. The second layer is a chip layer, which essentially is the GPUs, CPUs, and all the other chips that are required for the AI computations to run. That's 2. 3 is the AI infrastructure services layer. Essentially, think of them as Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, or Amazon Web Services. These companies not only use these chips, but also provide a range of services around it to make all AI applications happen. And this is something that most AI researchers would take for granted. They would not want to build this because it's already done. The fourth layer, which is probably the one layer where most people have conversations about, is the model layer,
Right.
which is, okay, the intelligence from all the data in the world. Collect all the data, build the intelligence so that you can do wonderful things with it. That's layer 4. And layer 5 are the wonderful things that you can do with it, which is applications. What problems are you solving? Whether it's healthcare, whether it's underwriting, how do you build that layer in such a way that you can solve real problems, drive real impact? And these are the 5 layers. One of the things that Jensen doesn't talk about is how it transforms workflows inside companies, which probably is the 6th layer. And underneath even the energy layer is a talent layer. You need amazing talent to build all of this stuff. So if you think of all of this, that is really the entire stack as far as AI is concerned. And when we have a question about sovereignty, it's important to examine how are we doing on each of these layers? Are we well equipped? Or do we have critical dependencies because of which somebody could turn it off for you? That's really how we could think of sovereignty.
Yeah, I suppose it's fair to say that India and pretty much most peer countries probably have control over just 2 layers in that 5-layer stack. With the exception of US, China, maybe South Korea, France, nobody else has control over all 4, 5, 6 layers, right? So, I mean, this is a non-starter for conversation, would you say?
Well, I would have a slightly maybe complementary view of sovereignty, though I will allude to some of the points that Srikanth has made. My view of sovereignty, and I give credit to one of our IITB alum, Professor Anurag Mehral at Stanford, for this, putting the last mile as a first mile. I'll start with some examples. Data, right? The way often data gets procured, there's absolute lack of transparency, visibility. Borrowing from our own experience at BharatGen, one of our consortium partners at IIM Indore, Indian Institute of Management Indore, they've done a fabulous job going to second-tier cities, going to libraries, educating people who have archives about the value of the data that they hold, right? This is not just sourcing data, but educating them, empowering them, and letting them make informed decision. And now this might look a little bit, of the how part rather than the what part of sovereignty. But I think the two are very closely related. We all know data is garbage in, garbage out, right? How do you ensure that across multiple vendors, you procure the data, that there are no duplicates or nearly zero duplicates? If data is just being consumed by the model with no visibility or the quality of the data,
right,
I think we are compromising on sovereignty.
Okay.
I think, if I may just push back a little bit on this thought. As human beings, we all grow up with varied experiences. It's essentially all of the data that we are collecting every day. We have a certain upbringing. We don't have complete control over everything that we watch every day or all the people that we meet every day. So we do collect a lot of the data, but eventually, because of right parenting or because of right set of initial experiences, right teachers, things like that, we develop a morality or a way of solving problems and become good people in the world, even though we may have bad experiences. So in many ways, the models that we currently have, the AI models that we currently have a similar kind of a workflow, right? They see a lot of the data of the world. A lot of that is garbage, for sure. And the more pristine the data, the more efficient will be your compute. But let's say we have access to all kinds of data. But through this process, these models make a certain understanding of the world, and they're able to parse out what is true, what is false, or what is something that I should not be learning, what is harmful, and things like that. And with the right kind of a constitutional morality, to borrow a principle that you already used, if you have the right kind of a constitutional morality underneath the models, some of the data challenges can be handled in this way as well. Do you agree?
I agree.
We may have moved a little bit into a slightly esoteric realm. And the reason why I'm saying that is I'm still equating sovereignty with some very basic stuff, right? Access to the size of models that we need to be able to run the kind of intelligence work that we ought to do. So, for instance, BharatGen might be building smaller models. You spoke of pricing. Many others under the AI mission have received funding to do that. But is that enough? Do we need a frontier model? Can we talk of sovereignty without a frontier model? So I'm assuming power, energy, resource, talent, as you put in that. Okay, covered. Maybe that's achievable. Applications, and diffusion, achievable. But the 3-4 mid-layers, sort of mid-layers that you spoke of in the Jensen stack, we have no control over any of those things.
So, and maybe to put your question into context, across the last 400 or 500 years, we've seen that technological progress equates to control of the world. Every time a new tech came up, whether it is shipbuilding or whether it is gunpowder or whether it is industrial revolution, it's information revolution, the base of power shifted to whoever harnessed that new technology the best. The sovereignty question essentially is that this new AI technology, which seems to be the bigger and better than all of the previous technologies combined, what if somebody has a control over it? Will that power control the world? Vladimir Putin said in 2017, almost 9 years ago, that whoever controls AI will control the world. He had that insight back in the day. So it is essentially that point that sovereignty is, will countries become somewhat of a digital colony to the rest of the world because they don't have the entire stack in control, because they don't have some elements of the stack in their control. And you saw that play out last year when US and China were having this dispute over rare earth minerals and whether China could cut off access. So even though you could say that US has the whole stack, but the chip layer is critically dependent on some of the rare earth minerals. Therefore, I think one point we must acknowledge is that the world has been built in a different way over the last 100 odd years. We've built the world for globalization. Over the last 100 years, people have moved across countries, companies have multiple branches, these supply chains are global. We are sitting in a world where we are talking of sovereignty when we know that one person, the world is critically dependent on each country. If one country shuts off something, the world will go into a tailspin. That's how the world currently is set up. So before anyone acts on that, okay, I have control over the models, let me shut off, they have to see all the repercussions that will ensue after that. For example, India, if you take an India point of view, India has access to GCCs, right? India is now the second largest destination of talent after the home country for most companies in the world. Now, if somebody takes a fight with India in some way, let's say, right? So there's an issue of sovereignty. GCCs are all sitting in India, accessing, building some of the most critical applications for the world and solving big problems. Indian tech industry represents, all of the, almost like a vast majority of the code written in the world is being written out of India. So for someone to take action on a sovereignty level involves taking risks on all these fronts as well. So the world is way too global for the sovereignty to play out in a very, let's say, simplistic way that we may be conceptualizing right now.
I would still like to build upon a point I was making now, since Srikanth has actually talked about the intricacies, the factual intricacies today. I would still say aspirationally, AI sovereignty, I would liken it to the last mile, first mile analogy I gave, to the growth of a tree. Right? Imagine, a simple analogy is if you wanted a tree to grow sustainably, you would like to ensure that a big tree has deep roots, right? If you view India as a use case capital, you're just talking about the fruits of the tree. But what about the roots going deep? And you talk about the 5 layers. They do comprise the healthy growth in this tree ecosystem. But the last mile, being the first mile for me is the fruit. The fact that the seed for the next tree are actually going to be lying in the seeds of the fruit that grow the same tree, which means you're able to plow back data into better models and better models to plow back data. Models are helping use cases and use cases are helping build this virtuous cycle of deep tech innovation happening in the country. Today, we have only seen the tip of the iceberg as far as AI adoption is concerned, as well as AI technology itself is concerned. And we can't imagine sustainability. How could you sustain AI at the pace at which it's growing? I talked about the fact that we can get 5 rupees for 1 million token, but I don't think we can be content with that. We need to go way lower.
Okay.
So say population scale. So this is where participation comes. You need participation of researchers, users, data providers, everyone. Everyone needs to be, just like a tree grows then there's participation.
No argument with that. But so far, from what I hear from both of you, the leverage we seem to be having as a country, and I'm talking about India specifically here right now, and I'm not sure all other countries, even in the same peer group, will have the same leverage, is data and GCCs. So I want to contrast this with, let's say, for instance, the reaction when 2 incidents. When Nayara Energy, lost access to its own data because of US sanctions on account of Russian oil, and this is a sort of company located here in India, could not access its own data. More recently, no immediate humongous impact on India, but the export controls that the US has levied on Claude,
Lithos.
So, Lithos, so Claude products, on Anthropic products. So I'm just curious to know, how should we be reacting to this? Are you saying that for a while, till this technology settles, you will see different countries use the leverage they have to play this AI sovereignty power game, and that this becomes par for course, that someday we will stand up and say, we'll stop access to our data for your models, as leverage, and then somebody will say, we'll stop access to chips?
Exactly. So this kind of a standoff, Mexican standoff, is not going to work anywhere. Yes, we have had those instances. No, absolutely agree with you that this is a wake-up call for any country to think about their technological sovereignty. I know countries in Europe are thinking very hard about this. India, active conversation on this topic. Having said that, I would like to point out a couple of things. Look at Fable 5. Before that, Mythos, right? Anthropic made the decision that these are the companies, 50 companies, mostly American, who would be part of the Glasswing project. It was not a sovereign decision. It was not a government decision, number one. And coming to Fable 5, there seems to be much more to it about Anthropic's relationship with the US government rather than a systematic need to cut off access to the world from a model. So I don't think there's any nefarious action as of right now. Even in the enlightened self-interest of largest countries in the world, the biggest, most powerful countries in the world, they want AI diffusion to happen today, and rather than AI being cut off. Now, given the instances, does India need to think about the stack, the AI stack carefully and manage each element of the stack, not just by saying I will be self-sufficient? Sovereignty is not self-sufficiency. Sovereignty means a smart way of interdependence with clearly identified things that I must own. I must own, I must control, I must have access to some elements of this in such a way. For example, if there's a model that is, let's say, spewing bad things about India and that has uncontrolled access within India, it could be bad for India's political stability. So does India need to have some control over the models that are being used and what answers they're providing? At some point of time, it will become a necessity. So yes, these are elements that India needs to control. But if you think of chips, even if India were to decide that I want full self-sufficiency in chips, we are 15 years away from that. So we have to have at least. So we have to have a time frame for, let's say, self-sufficiency, even if that's an ambition. But very importantly, what we need to do is to have a partnership strategy. We have very good allies around the world. We have a strong partnership with the United States. And United States has never attacked a country where there's been a McDonald's. As they say, globalization is the best bet for stability in the world. So I am still the old-fashioned globalist who thinks that world should be more global and globalization is a very, very good thing, even though that may not be a popular opinion today. But that is the stability that world needs, because when a world is interlocked, supply chains are interlocked, when countries are using each other's resources and everybody is doing what they're best at, world grows at a much faster pace than otherwise.
Sure. It is not my intent to introduce a doomsday scenario here of, this Mexican standoff you spoke of. But I do want to use that potential doomsday scenario to try and assess whether India's sovereignty strategies, are as wholesome and as holistic as they ought to be. And I want to try and get both of you to draw contrast with what you're seeing other countries across the world do. For instance, I believe Brazil is trying to build its own cloud, a sovereign cloud. UAE has done some interesting things in terms of allying with the US to build a Stargate cluster, but also using an Alibaba LLM, to try and build a small model unique to its country in Arabic. So how would you score India on its sovereignty strategy?
So I'll piggyback on some of the important points that Srikanth talked about, specifically interlocking, right? Now, I think we could have a very constructive outlook as far as interlocking is concerned in terms of stability. One such example I would allude to, which is a very honest effort to build frontier AI capability while having AI sovereignty, is Project Tapestry. Now, along the sidelines of the G7, there was a very important announcement that was also made, and that does talk about Bharatjan leading the way for India. Now, what is Project Tapestry? This entire process began at the India AI Impact Summit, and I think India Impact Summit, credit to the Indian government, really brought together very good people. So we had a Tapestry kickoff workshop last month in May. This was in Paris. What was very interesting is the cohort of people, right? The participants, everyone doing really solid work in their own spaces. Japan, there was open data spaces, doing an excellent job, not just in terms of data curation, but also access control, right? A wonderful stack built around data. There is the Swiss AI Institute, which is again a consortium of EPFL, ETH Zurich, and so on, building open source models. Bharatjan obviously presented our journey. We presented our journey. A very important outcome of this workshop was the launch of Project Tapestry. The idea behind Tapestry is federated frontier model building. So federation would mean that each country, each entity builds sovereign AI models according to their capacity, right?
Okay.
But the federation allows you to share what you decide to share, what each entity decides to share, in a privacy-preserving manner, so that there is a sum of parts being greater than the whole. So getting to frontier model capability through federation. And that's where I would say, and I'm just therefore, building upon or amplifying Srikanth's point, that I think that there are approaches to globalization which can actually preserve AI sovereignty. I'm presenting one. I'll be very happy to be challenged.
It's a wonderful project, and I think this may give a lot of hope for all the countries not called US and China, right? That they're coming together to create this tapestry. It's a beautiful word as well. Now, maybe I'll give you a report card on where I think India stands on the 5-layer stack, right?
Sure.
Before that, talent, we've got amazing talent, 6 million developers. So I think clearly, as you think of AI being diffused around the world, India will play a very important role, because when intelligence becomes a commodity or intelligence becomes cheap, the kind of things you can do with intelligence will just multiply like crazy, and India will play a huge role in making that happen around the world. So because of the talent that we have. Now, if you look at the 5-layer stack, energy. Now, it may be surprising to some of us here that India is self-sufficient on energy. After decades and decades, we have made rapid strides in the last few years in terms of solar energy and so on. We are self-sufficient on energy.
All right. So that's a tick box.
That's a tick. Now coming to chips. We have a national semiconductor mission. Early days. We have some successes like Micron and being in India, etc. But I would say that this is the weakest layer of the whole puzzle.
And a layer the widest gap to try and cross.
Absolutely.
I don't think we will ever get there.
Absolutely.
Right? Anyway,
and here, smart partnership and interdependence is very crucial for India.
Okay.
By the way, the chip system in the world is quite beautifully balanced, with NVIDIA sitting in the US, TSMC sitting in Taiwan, and ASML sitting in Netherlands. It's a beautiful balance. So I think I think we can manage the second layer. The third layer is AI infrastructure. Now, India has done something wonderful in the last 1 year, which is to create a data center tax holiday for data centers in India, which should invite a lot of data centers to be built in India. And some of us may see as some, it may be as problematic because of the water usage, etc. But just think about data centers being cheaper in India relative to the rest of the world. And the biggest countries in the world or the biggest models in the world might come and build their data centers in India for inferencing, which will be most of the workload, right? Which means that because of all those data centers coming to India, we will also see a kind of a strategic autonomy, or let's say at least a +1 on sovereignty, when many countries are depend on India from a data center standpoint. So we are doing well on data centers. There are also a lot of Indian AI infrastructure players that have emerged, like NISA and Yota, etc. So I think we are doing okay on the third one. On the fourth one, which is on the model layer, you could argue that we have a problem because we don't have a frontier model. But we just spoke to Bharatjan. Bharatjan is building some amazing models for India. We have Sarvam, which is building some very good models. They've just raised a lot of capital. We have Fractal building Vaidya and other frontier models. So we have a lot of progress happening on this front. We still don't have the multi-billion-dollar compute to drive to, let's say, rival an Anthropic or OpenAI. But I think if you look at specialized models that do a very good job and achieve frontier status in a domain, I think India has made progress. So that's 4. And fifth layer is applications. India has 3,500 deep tech startups. 90% of them are AI startups. The entrepreneurs are amazing. They are thinking very big. India has 400 space tech startups. So we are doing really well on the application front as well. So overall, it's not as dire as it might seem on the outside that India hasn't figured it out. India is actually systematically going about the stack and building its capacity, and while also relying on the world to make sure that some of the elements like the chip layer is managed within it.
Okay, my impression is, despite the best intentions of our semiconductor mission, we're decades behind most other countries that do manufacture chips, and the current projects envisaged under that mission, are very basic chip work, not the kind of chips that you need, to power AI. Am I correct in understanding that?
One thing to note is that India has amazing chip design talent as well. Because if you think about which is the
But
second
we provide
largest,
it to the rest of the world. We haven't done it here. We have one fab in the making. One fab.
I get the fab point. Absolutely. Fabs are very expensive, typically high, they're capital intensive. They don't employ too many people. Therefore, usually a country like India, which is capital light and labor heavy, may not build the fabs themselves. So that is correct. Having said that, look at NVIDIA. It's one of the most valuable companies in the world, if not the most valuable company in the world. And it doesn't have a fab. It has a very strategic dependence on TSMC.
Yeah.
So much so that TSMC is building factories in the US too, so that there's no dependence on Taiwan. It has dependence in ASML. So this is already quite locked in with Netherlands having ASML, TSMC being in Taiwan, and NVIDIA being in America. So it's okay for us we have amazing talent. We can design those chips and we can use a TSMC and ASML to build those chips. So it's not as hard or as impossible as it might seem from the outset.
Just to kind of add to this again, given adoption possibilities in India, I would say if we make significant progress on models with low latency, with also leaving low footprint, alluding to again your point on frontier AI model capability, I don't think you need to fit a square peg in a round hole. You need all kinds of models. You need the frontier capability models as well as very focused models. Therefore, I talk about capability here rather than frontier models, right? You need to build that capability even into the smaller models. The more progress we make there and open doorways for adoption, I'm very confident we'll actually have a big emergence of this fabulous sector.
So what seems like yawning gaps right now will become small slit holes that can easily be covered by either federation work or by advancement in technology in itself or by additional investment. And so 3 years down the line, we won't even be having this debate around sovereign AI. Is that your argument?
Is there hope? Absolutely. Is there work to be done? Surely. Lots of work to be done. And I would say that we need to really increase the size of our investments in this space overall.
Excellent. That was the next question I did want to bring
I must
to both of
credit
you.
Fractal for that. I think Fractal has been extremely product oriented and really appreciate. We also need to build that product mindset into our DNA here.
But Ganesh, I do want to make this point that even if Fractal did 10 times the kind of investment it's currently doing, and even if the government of India did 10 times the current investment, which is roughly about $1 billion or so, we're not going to match up even with countries like the UAE, which are pumping in 10x the amount, even if our investments were to multiply 10 times. So I think for me, much that I appreciate the sanguine approach to sovereign AI, I feel investments is also going to become a yawning gap at some point or the other. You don't think so?
Can I offer you maybe some hope? We saw this announcement just a couple of days ago that Meta is investing $1 billion in an Indian startup called Cred. In the process, they're taking Kunal Shah, who's the founder of that company, to become the head of WhatsApp. This is exactly the kind of deal that Meta did a year ago when they invested in Scale.ai and took Alexander Wong out to build their AI. What you're seeing is the kind of deep respect for India talent based in India. Indian talent hasn't always been great when they're in the valley. But this is the first time I'm seeing somebody saying, I'm going to acquihire Cred in order to get Kunal to come and run WhatsApp for me. This is a huge breakthrough moment for India in terms of recognition of the kind of talent and ability to build products. Now, just imagine a couple of entrepreneurs like Kunal. There are many, many amazing entrepreneurs in India. A couple of entrepreneurs like Kunal build the next breakthrough AI model. Then the chances of them being able to raise billions of dollars of capital has suddenly become much, much more feasible. So it's entirely possible that what happened to Anthropic and what happened to OpenAI, what's happened to, let's say, SpaceX, these kinds of companies which are extraordinarily ambitious, those kinds of companies can get created in India. I think what we've seen is a slight sliver of hope that this is not too far for India as well. We built amazing education institutions over the last 50 years, like IIT Bombay and etc. And we are producing that really top-level talent, that 5 Sigma talent, I would call it, on the bell curve. They can build India to the next level And as long as we can generate that capital, and with that Meta announcement, I feel like with capital is not that far out. Sarvam raising at a valuation of 1.5 billion is another example.
Can I argue that maybe we as Indians are often very quickly impressed with our work? Because you're talking about Sarvam's 1 billion and, deep respect for that company. But my gosh, it's a penny in the AI, sort of investment pool right now across the world, maybe half a penny, to be honest. So I get the optimism and I get that hope is necessary to survive in this world. But I still feel like we are very short of being able to have confidence of control over at least necessary elements in this AI revolution to ensure that 1.4 billion people can benefit from it.
So India attained independence some 78 years ago. US 250 years old, right? We are 175 years behind US, and for 150 years we are a colony. So given that, from there, we have made rapid progress. This by the way, India looks a lot like China, let's say 15, 20 years ago, in just in terms of the shape of the curve that we have in terms of growth.
Srikanth, just have to step outside the studio on a street like Mumbai to eat your own words about India looks a lot like China. But
no, 15,
let me join the optimism lobby and also ask you one more question. Another reason why I feel maybe this sovereignty debate might become redundant in 2 or 3 or 4 years is because I can see the costs of compute also go down quite significantly, right? So right now I'm arguing, are we investing enough? 3 years down the line, that amount might seem enough simply because the costs of AI compute have gone down. Is that possible?
Yes. Models are becoming more efficient. It's much cheaper to build a model now than 3-4 years ago, so we can leapfrog. Number 2, the inference costs. Models are so beautifully optimized now that you don't have to run that much compute to give you very good, very high quality answers. So which means that the overall cost to serve as well as cost inferencing will keep coming down quite dramatically. So I think there will be a very high quality set of models which will be free or mostly free for the next few years.
Using the lens of AI sovereignty, also talk about a very important, very connected issue of diffusion, because all of this conversation we're having on AI will be rendered worthless if we don't talk about whether or what percentage of the population is benefiting from it. I'd like, sort of both of you to describe to me where or how you see the big momentum push playing out for retail AI and enterprise AI. Right now, one is very cheap, but being used for some very basic tasks. And in the other, it's expensive and companies are not sure what the returns will be. So just want to know, when does the acceleration start?
In addition to some of the points I already talked about, federation, I would also like to highlight, an approach that is more participatory as well, right? Zoho being a classic example in India. I worked very closely with Sridhar Vembu. I've seen the company grow, and you don't make technology affordable again as an afterthought. You make technology, grow the technology with the people who build the technology, right? And in fact, there's a capacity building also happening very subtly, and maybe at a pace that is actually often very appreciable as well. I mean, the number of centers I see that Zoho has actually grown, where biz tech people from villages have been able to contribute, helps adoption much faster, right? And I know Zoho has also been doing that with AI. We really need to bring that last mile as a first mile in every perspective. I mean, even when it comes to AI adoption, you can have technology that is complementary. You could have technology that is supplementary or substitutional. Now, what is complementary? A complementary technology would be that which plugs well into an existing ecosystem, right, of experts, of domain experts.
I think what Ganesh is trying to say is that if AI is replacing jobs and replacing human talent, then we are that is dangerous for a country which has 1.4 billion population. But if it's enhancing the products and services we already use, therefore accelerating or improving our experience, user experience, then these are much more powerful. Now, I think as far as retail AI is concerned, there's no need to do any diffusion. It's spreading on its own. Companies are incented because they're also getting data back in the process. People are using it to drive amazing things, right? Do amazing things with their time and become more productive. Yes, it's not showing up in productivity statistics and economy, but there is always a lag between actual productivity improvement versus when it shows in the stats.
May I contest this a little bit before you expound further? And that is that whilst India may be the second largest market, let's say for Anthropic or OpenAI, actually, if you look at the data in terms of diffusion, and Microsoft measures this quarterly report, we are at about a fifth of the working age population in terms of diffusion, far lower than Singapore or even UAE, where more than half the working age population has used a generative AI product of some sort. So I do feel like sometimes the absolute numbers hide the extent of lack of adoption of technology in this country, because the absolute number may be 200 million in a country of 1.4 billion, but it's a very small fraction of the population.
Take a look at OpenAI, 1 billion active users, which means 1 in 10 or 1 in 8, if you be optimistic, 1 in 8 people in the world are using OpenAI. We might think that, everybody in the world should be using ChatGPT, but it's only 1 in 8. So technology takes time to diffuse. And if 20%, which means 1 in 5 you said, so 20% of working age population is using it, it's already higher than, let's say, many parts of the world. So it's not all that bad, number one. Number two, when smartphones came around, people figured out how to use it. And India is one of the highest penetration of smartphones in the world. So I don't think there's a problem that we need to solve as far as diffusion of consumer AI is concerned or retail AI is concerned.
So you're saying that the fact that only a tenth of Indian households actually own a laptop is not going to be a constraint on the the spread of AI.
I think it's a wrong metric, because really all of this action is on the smartphone. It's all on the phone. The number of people who you open a laptop and go to ChatGPT are very few. People are going to use the app. They're going to go to the browser. India is an app economy, so I think it'll work. It'll work just fine. Now, I think what we need to think about is what are the ways in which we can turbocharge the economy. 2 vectors I always believe are the ones. Number one is education. Can we use AI to really accelerate education in our country? That's teachers getting better, students learning better, and therefore getting better outcomes. I think that is a force multiplier for the country. So if you're thinking of diffusion of AI, I would say, how do I bring AI into education so that I can drive much better education outcomes is a one vector. Second vector is entrepreneurship. So if you have amazingly educated people who are building amazing ideas, the world, India will be in a better place. I think entrepreneurs already get the potential of AI. And when intelligence becomes cheaper and cheaper, and some of the India AI mission, etc., is trying to make compute and access to AI easier and cheaper. Let's say we have access to entrepreneurs to build AI applications and we provide them compute. India will generate phenomenal ideas. And that's really where we should focus on education, entrepreneurship, and the rest. I think India will benefit tremendously from AI progress happening anywhere in the world.
Okay. I want to circle back to the point you made on AI apps on smartphones and ask you about not just the retail user being left behind, but also what happens to the small and medium industry, which, should be as big a beneficiary of productivity gains because of artificial intelligence, but if is not able to participate, will, just lead to an exacerbation of the inequality we see in this country. Is that a real threat?
Absolutely. I think AI in manufacturing is a huge opportunity. At the same time, if we don't put our bets on that for India, we might just, again, have increased exports there, right? AI in manufacturing is a huge opportunity for us to leapfrog. I think it should be done by also getting the skilled worker in the loop rather than bypass. I mean, just in terms of ensuring good adoption in the manufacturing sector. Would you like to add to that?
Yeah. See, the way I think about it is that roughly 1 million people in India should be able to write code with AI very, very effectively. They have to be one of the best coders in the world. 10 million people who can do a lot of amazing, applications, things they can use AI to really build a better business, etc. And 100 million people using AI every day to drive their productivity. Even if we have that right now, I think it's an amazing start, because this technology is on a path where people will automatically discover and you start using it, because it's so easy that everybody will tell you, oh, you're not doing this. It's like Google Maps. No one taught India to use Google Maps. The whole country started using Google Maps automatically. In a similar way, this technology, I don't think you have to worry about diffusion at that level. Now, coming to enterprises and small and medium enterprises, I see a struggle, which is that I understand how to use AI in a very basic way, but can I use AI significantly to drive advantage? I think this is a great time for a startup to figure out how to capture the small and medium enterprise space and really accelerate their AI progress. Somebody who builds that business today, I think has a good chance of creating something very wonderful and good for India.
The final point I wanted to make on diffusion was cost. How do we look at costs, let's say, over the next 5 to 10 years? Maybe the cost of compute will go down, but I don't know what will happen to the cost of power depending on what the demand will be. How does one view whether AI right now is deeply discounted, and therefore overused, and will get fully priced in a few years and become less used, or will it become cheaper?
Yeah, the good thing is that there is competition. These things, when there is monopolies, I think the prices can go up dramatically. But because of the open source ecosystem that China is happily contributing to, and the closed model ecosystem with some competition between Anthropic, OpenAI, Google, etc., Grok, we are seeing a market that is truly competitive, and the prices will stabilize or keep going down. The cost of inferencing, cost of model building, because of compute efficiency, etc., are already going down quite fast. When GPT-4 was launched, $36 per million tokens was the price. It came down to 36 cents per million tokens in just 2.5 years. So 100x reduction in price. This will continue happening. We don't have to worry about that. Now, cost of electricity, yes, if we have shortage of electricity, all of this can change. So the only country in the world that has fully figured this out is China, which is going from 3 terawatt to 9 terawatt in terms of total electricity generation capacity. India is self-sufficient, but if AI takes off like a rocket, India might have energy shortages. So it has to be very carefully planned as to what India does. As far as US is concerned, the data center growth is far outpacing electricity growth. So there is a problem in the making. But there are entrepreneurs like Elon who are saying, I will leverage the solar power, I'll build orbital data centers or build data centers in multiple countries. So there are many alternate mechanisms that are emerging. My sense is that this is a problem that's worth solving, but the world has an incentive to figure it out in such a way that electricity generation is not the reason why we are not making enough progress in the world of AI.
At least for India, would be significantly more R&D investment. I don't think the cost can go down without R&D. Adoption, to me, is also directly linked with the fact that you do research grounded in its usage. I mean, you could have research being done on the frontier models elsewhere. How does that benefit adoption of AI in India? I think you need research that is grounded at the intersection of model and its usage, which is through harness. I think R&D is key there, in addition, obviously, to ensuring that you also build AI sovereignty through the entire stack. We talked about the 5 layers. At some point of time, you will need the workloads to also translate into ASICs, into infrastructure, which are also affordable in India, right? The model, and it's a package. It's a package that actually creates affordability.
Okay. So now my final question to both of you, right? The US is known for still maintaining a lead in frontier models. China, I believe, is the highest AI publication rate, highest patent output in China. South Korea has, I believe, the highest innovation density in terms of patents per capita. In the next 3 to 5 years, will India join that rarefied group? And if yes, for what accomplishment?
What I would like India to do is also have frontier status in terms of having frontier models, as well as having papers and patents, which, we already have the 3rd largest number of papers, research papers published. Yes, quality of papers may be a different question altogether, but the number of high quality papers is also increasing at a very rapid pace. India has amazing talent. Once it's unleashed, I think you'll see progress. So whether it's papers, whether it's models, applications, all these metrics, India could be a leading player in the world.
Srikanth, why are you wishing a frontier model for India?
I think India needs a frontier model, because just think about
why.
From a sovereignty standpoint, we discussed that having a frontier model is crucial to that, not because we don't want to use other people's models, but we also need some models that have are working on some of the most critical security sensitive areas like defense and other areas. So it's super important that India has that, because even if you look at the latest models like Mythos and Fable 5, why do we think they are a threat? Because they have the ability to persist and find multiple ways and get to the outcome and work for 10, 15 hours at a stretch without making a mistake. That is their power, right? If that can be done, it means that India's security systems can be under attack. So we need sovereignty from an AI standpoint. So these models have to be built.
And the frontier model capability will also extend to small models, by the way. I mean, it's a capability.
I just felt like it brought us full circle in the discussion around sovereignty.
And I would like to just add one more point, right? I mean, when I say adoption can be our big USP, it needs to translate into products. We cannot be doing body shopping in the name of adoption, right? Adoption should let startups build deep tech products, platforms. It should be platforms that lead to adoption.
Ganesh, Srikanth, thank you for joining us on Emerging. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.